Welcome back to another deep dive. We're thrilled to have you with us today.
Really glad you could join us.
Yeah, and if you're joining us for the first time, you are in exactly the right place. We take a pretty towering stack of research and industry reports, and we just distill it down to the essential insights you need to stay ahead of the curve.
And today's topic is a big one.
It is. We are looking at a demographic time bomb that is, frankly, ticking away in the global workforce right now. But we aren't just here to admire the problem.
Right.
We are examining a really fascinating technological response. We've been reviewing the February 2026 launch announcement for a platform called EON Genesis 3.0.
Developed by EON AI Ventures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission for you today is to explore how this fusion of artificial intelligence, immersive virtual reality, and multi-platform training is stepping in to solve a crisis that is keeping industrial executives and safety managers awake at night.
It truly is a pivotal moment for global infrastructure. I mean, we are standing on the edge of a profound demographic shift. The traditional methodologies we've relied on to transfer knowledge, they simply aren't engineered for the speed and the scale of what is currently unfolding.
No, they really aren't.
The source material outlines a highly sophisticated technological architecture designed to address a very biological, very human reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the underlying statistics driving this technology are a massive wake-up call.
Absolutely.
When we talk about a workforce crisis, we are not just talking about a temporarily tight labor market or, shifting remote work preferences. We are looking at an unprecedented brain drain.
Yes.
According to the data, 50% of the global workforce is set to retire in the next 5 to 7 years.
Half of the workforce.
Half. Just picture a heavy manufacturing plant or an offshore oil rig or even a municipal power grid. In a few short years, every second person you see operating that critical infrastructure will be gone.
Which is staggering when you actually visualize it.
And they are taking decades of highly specialized, unwritten physical intuition out the door with them.
And that kind of seasoned institutional knowledge is notoriously difficult to capture. It's not just about filling an empty position on an org chart. It's about replacing judgment.
Right.
Judgment that is forged over 30 years of listening to a turbine spin and knowing exactly when it sounds just slightly off.
Yeah, you can't just put that in a PDF.
Exactly. And when we examine the data on how companies are currently attempting to mitigate this, the limitations are glaring.
Oh, yeah.
The traditional corporate training apparatus is fundamentally failing. The report notes that ineffective training is costing enterprises up to 360 hours per employee annually.
That's incredible.
If you extrapolate that across a company of, say, 10,000 employees, you are looking at millions of lost hours every single year. Because the training either doesn't stick yet, it lacks context, or it's entirely disconnected from the physical reality of the job.
I think we've all lived through a version of that. I know I have definitely been guilty of tabbing out of a mandatory corporate training video, muting my browser, and just waiting for the next button to turn blue.
So you can just take the multiple choice quiz and get your compliance certificate.
Exactly. It's universally miserable, and clearly it doesn't work. The document highlights a knowledge attrition rate of up to 40% within just 2 years.
Almost half.
Yeah, you spend capital and time onboarding someone, and 24 months later, nearly half of what they supposedly learned has simply evaporated.
Which brings us to a really crucial distinction highlighted in the architecture of EON Genesis 3.0. A reactionary move for many enterprises has been to simply throw generic artificial intelligence at this problem.
Right.
They use large language models to generate text-based manuals or summarize standard operating procedures or build those interactive quizzes we just mentioned. But the data reveals that generic AI delivers at its absolute peak about 80% efficacy in enterprise training.
Right, and 80% might be perfectly acceptable if you were training a new hire on how to navigate the company's expense reporting software.
Sure.
If they mess up accounting, sends an angry email. But for the sectors we are talking about here,
Aviation energy grids, heavy chemical manufacturing.
healthcare, for those FUs, 80% is terrifying. If you are calibrating a high-pressure industrial valve in a volatile environment, you cannot be 80% sure of your sequence.
No, you absolutely cannot.
High-stakes sectors require absolute 100% readiness. In those environments, a 20% margin of error isn't a learning opportunity, it is a localized catastrophe.
And that is the exact threshold where EON Genesis 3.0 operates. It is designed specifically to close that 20% gap.
To bridge the divide between an LLM's theoretical knowledge and a human worker's physical execution.
Yes. Essentially, they have taken the rigorous zero-fail architecture of a multi-million-dollar aviation flight simulator, and they've democratized it for everyday industrial infrastructure.
That makes so much sense.
It's a full-blown immersive simulator designed to guarantee that 100% competency is achieved before an employee ever lays a finger on a real physical piece of high-voltage equipment.
What's fascinating here is the underlying cognitive science of how the platform actually structures the learning environment. It doesn't just drop a user into a chaotic virtual sandbox.
Right, it's very structured.
Very. It enforces a very strict four-phase learning cycle. Show me, train up. Let me try, evaluate me.
And this sequence fundamentally mirrors the traditional hands-on apprenticeship model that has successfully transferred complex human skills for centuries.
Yes.
But it scales that dynamic digitally to accelerate the time to competency.
It makes a lot of sense when you break it down like that. But how does that actually play out for the user putting on the VR headset or opening the tablet? Walk us through that sequence.
Sure. So the first phase, Show Me, operates as an avatar-guided demonstration. The system physically executes the process in the spatial computing environment.
Okay.
You're watching a master perform the task, observing the specific spatial relationships of the tools and the machinery.
And then the second phase.
Second is Train. In this phase, you are performing the action, but the system is providing heavy scaffolding. Visual guardrails, highlighted interaction points, and prompts.
So basically training wheels. You are doing the physical motion, building that muscle memory, but you can't really fail yet.
Precisely. It shifts the brain from semantic memory, which is just recalling facts, to procedural memory, which is how we remember how to ride a bike or drive a car.
Got it.
Then comes the third phase. Let me try. The scaffolding is removed. You engage in independent practice, making decisions and executing the physical steps without prompts.
And then the final test.
Right, the fourth phase, Evaluate Me. This is a rigorous, unassisted simulation assessment. The system strictly measures your spatial and chronological competency, generating really granular data on your performance.
Because active recall and spatial engagement create significantly denser neural pathways than just passive observation.
Exactly.
That leads perfectly into what they call EON Genesis Interact, which is the immersive simulation layer where all of this happens.
Yeah.
The documentation points out that this layer includes over 8 different interaction types. We're talking about complex cause and effect scenarios, spatial manipulation of virtual assets, and voice-guided interactions.
It completely eliminates that passive click next to continue loophole we were joking about earlier.
It does. And it does that through what the platform calls strict mode transitions. In Genesis 3.0, progression logic is absolute.
Meaning you can't cheat.
You cannot cheat. The user is physically gated from moving to the next step of a complex operation until they have actively demonstrated the required interaction. You cannot fast forward through the procedural memory building.
Now, a rigorous simulation is great, but the obvious bottleneck here is deployment. If you have a global workforce of 30,000 people, they don't all have the same hardware.
Right. Some have VR headsets, some have tablets.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. EON has a module called EON Multi, which utilizes an author once run everywhere paradigm.
Platform parity has historically been the bane of enterprise spatial computing.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Previously, if an organization wanted to train employees, they had to maintain separate development tracks. One code base for desktop users, a completely different architecture for mobile or tablet users, and a highly specialized build for virtual reality headsets.
Right.
It was a logistical and financial nightmare to keep them all updated simultaneously.
But with EON Multi, you build that training module one single time, and the system inherently understands how to deploy it across all those devices natively right.
Correct. The system seamlessly adapts the inputs and outputs based on the hardware the employee is using at that exact moment.
Okay, so if I'm in a VR headset.
If you're in a VR headset, the platform automatically activates haptic feedback. When you grab a virtual lever, you feel the localized vibration and resistance in the controllers.
But what if I'm out in the field with an iPad?
If a different employee is taking that exact same training module on a tablet out in the field via WebXR, the system intelligently swaps the spatial input for touch or voice commands.
That's brilliant.
The underlying logic and the strict evaluation metrics remain identical, ensuring robust, standardized learning regardless of the hardware.
Wait, I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
This all sounds incredibly sleek from the user's perspective, but how are these modules actually being created?
That's the big question.
If we are talking about capturing the knowledge of a 60-year-old retiring plant manager who has been turning wrenches for 4 decades, That person likely has zero experience coding 3D environments.
No.
Expecting them to build a spatial computing simulation sounds completely impossible.
That is exactly the friction point that has historically prevented this technology from scaling. And it is precisely what EON addresses with their AI integration, specifically their conversational authoring and AI behavior generation pipeline.
So they don't need to know C# or how to rig 3D assets.
Not at all. The platform allows non-technical subject matter experts like that veteran plant manager to construct these highly complex modules using simple natural language prompts. The expert can literally just describe the mechanical sequence to the system. They can say, when the user turns this red valve past 40 degrees, the pressure gauge on the secondary tank needs to spike and an alarm should sound.
Just talking to it normally?
Yes. The AI behavior generation pipeline interprets that natural language and dynamically builds the responsive spatial scenario in real time.
Yes. Wild. They're effectively allowing the veteran worker to just talk to the AI, and the AI handles all the underlying physics and logic linking.
And the release also mentions reusable behavior libraries.
Oh, right.
So if that plant manager designs a flawless multi-step conditional sequence for a specific hydraulic pump, they can save that logic block.
Got it.
When a new facility opens up next year, the training department doesn't have to start from scratch. They just pull that proven behavior template from the library and apply it to the new 3D models.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, particularly regarding high-risk operations and safety, the platform's simulated IoT and sensor integration is where this technology really transcends basic spatial training. Genesis 3.0 supports the integration of virtual sensors that mimic the flow of actual telemetry data.
Let's ground that in a physical reality. Walk me through what that actually looks like for an operator in one of these high-stakes environments.
Okay, let's use a chemical plant operator as our example. You don't just need that operator to memorize a manual. You need to evaluate their psychological and physical response to a cascading system failure.
Because that's when things actually go wrong.
Right, because Genesis 3.0 utilizes simulated IoT data. You can recreate a live, volatile operational environment. The digital twin of a containment tank is sitting there in the simulation. The system triggers a virtual sensor to simulate a rapid, unexpected pressure drop.
So the alarms are going off, the telemetry data on their virtual dashboard is flashing red, the controllers might be vibrating with haptic feedback.
Exactly. And the operator has a very narrow window to initiate the correct manual override sequence. This system uses rigorous safety gating, constantly evaluating their actions in real time.
Does it know the difference between a small mistake and a major one?
Yes, it differentiates between a critical safety violation like opening the wrong relief valve and a non-critical error. It allows an enterprise to expose a worker to incredibly realistic high-stress variables and catastrophic system failures.
They experience the adrenaline and the cognitive load of a crisis, but without putting themselves, their colleagues, or a multi-billion-dollar facility at any real-world risk.
It is the ultimate zero-risk environment to make a catastrophic mistake, analyze exactly why it happened, and ensure it never happens on the actual factory floor.
So what does this all mean?
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, the implications ripple outward depending on where you sit in the economy.
Yeah.
If you are a new hire stepping into a highly complex technical role, a platform like this is the difference between crippling imposter syndrome and day one readiness.
Truly.
It bridges that terrifying gap between the theoretical textbook concepts you read and the real-world tactile execution you are responsible for.
And for the executives, operations managers, and safety directors looking at that 5 to 7 year window where half of their most experienced personnel are walking out the door, this isn't just a shiny new software tool.
No, it's essential.
It is a critical operational lifeline. It provides a scalable mechanism to extract, digitize, and perfectly replicate the irreplaceable expertise of your veterans, ensuring that your core operations don't grind to a halt due to a sudden vacuum of knowledge.
And even if you aren't in the industrial sector as an everyday citizen, you implicitly rely on the people running our power grids, our water treatment facilities, and our transportation network.
You definitely do.
You want the people at those control panels trained to absolute 100% readiness, not an 80% AI-generated approximation.
There is a very poignant quote in the release from Dan Lidgerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures.
What does he say?
He states that EON Genesis 3.0 revolutionizes enterprise training by fusing immersive technologies with adaptive scalability, empowering companies to prepare their workforce for the AI era.
That's a strong statement.
He makes it clear that this is an acceleration layer built on their 25 years of experience in immersive learning. It sits perfectly in the space between raw computational AI capability and actual measurable human workforce readiness.
That 25-year pedigree is a crucial detail. We are currently seeing a flood of startups attempting to pivot into enterprise AI with very little understanding of industrial constraints.
Oh, we see it all the time.
EON AI Ventures is applying decades of extended reality and spatial computing experience to modern generative AI capabilities. They have architected a platform explicitly for zero-fail environments where precision is non-negotiable.
Let's bring all of these threads together. We started by looking at a looming economic crisis, a 50% retirement cliff rapidly approaching a 40% knowledge attrition rate among current employees, and the sobering reality that generic large language models simply cannot get us past that 80% competency mark in high-stakes physical industries.
All right, and EON Genesis 3.0 steps directly into that void. By enforcing the show me train, let me try evaluate me cognitive cycle, enabling seamless multi-platform accessibility and empowering veteran workers with natural language. AI authoring it offers a fully scalable experiential solution.
It translates theoretical knowledge into measurable physical capability to safely train the next generation of the global workforce.
It's a masterful application to advanced technology to solve a pressing demographic challenge. But looking at the sheer volume of data this system processes, this raises an important question.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
It pushes well beyond the immediate goal of enterprise training. Think about the underlying mechanics we just discussed. Platforms like Genesis 3.0 are using AI and natural language processing and simulated IoT data to perfectly replicate, teach, and assess complex human physical actions with 100% precision.
Right, they are mapping the exact spatial and temporal sequences of master technicians.
Exactly. Right now, AI's biggest hurdle in the physical world, often referred to as Moravec's paradox, is that it can write a beautiful sonnet in seconds, but it struggles immensely to figure out how to properly orient and turn a wrench in a chaotic physical environment.
It lacks grounded spatial training data.
But as millions of human workers go through platforms like Genesis 3.0, performing these complex spatial tasks, reacting to simulated IoT failures, and having their physical movements perfectly evaluated.
We are essentially building the largest, most highly detailed library of simulated physical behaviors in human history.
Yes. How long until these massive libraries of spatial data are used not just to train the human workforce, but to train embodied AI?
We might be inadvertently generating the exact training data required for humanoid robotics to eventually fully automate those very same complex jobs.
Oh, wow. That is quite the paradigm shift to leave off on. We are paying our veteran experts to digitize their physical intuition to train the new human hires. But that same data loop might eventually be the key to teaching the machines how to do the physical work themselves.
It's definitely something to think about.
We will definitely leave you with that concept to mull over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found this exploration of the workforce demographic crisis and EON's immersive AI solution as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did.
Keep questioning the systems around you.
Keep exploring these concepts on your own, and we will catch you on the next one.